Furious Driving, proud to be supported by Diamond Bright, protecting, cleaning and caring for the Furious fleet and for yours with 10% off using code FD10. Follow the links in the description below. Hello and welcome to Furious Driving, and today I'm in something really quite cool, quite interesting, quite special as it goes. This is a Saab 900 Turbo, one of the original ones from 1983. And not just that, this car has got an absolutely unique story to it as well. Buckle up, this is a good one. By the way, if you like reviews of interesting, unusual, different, new, old, retro and modern cars, then please do hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. Now on with the review. Okay, so the Saab 900 was born in 1978. It was based loosely, well pretty much, on the Saab 99. In fact, it was based very heavily on the Saab 99. Turbo is nice, and it ran all the way up until 1994. In fact, it ran a bit longer than that because there was a new model in 94 that ran to 98, but that was a completely new car based on a GM platform which has no relation to this car beyond the name, and that ultimately became the 93, so you know what we're talking about there. But anyway, this was the product of a car company with a really different attitude to the way things should be done. Because Saab isn't a car company first, it's an aeroplane company. And that means they look at things a little bit differently. So while we have got the standard layout of steering wheel, gear shift, pedals, all that kind of thing, it's not exactly the same as you would find anywhere else because they've thought about it really logically. All the controls are laid out in relation to how often you use them. And judging by how frequently I keep dabbing the horn by mistake, they must assume that most of their drivers are Italian. But that means that the headlight switch is right by the steering wheel. The indicator's obviously nearby. The fog light switch for misty Sweden is at a thumb's breadth away from there. And as you move further away, things that are less frequently used are further from your hand. Very logical indeed. The radio is in your eye line. The A posts and B posts are very thin, but also designed to be strong because of, well, elk in the wilderness. If they come across your bonnet, they hurt. But they engineered the thing totally differently as well. You're much better crashing the Saab than you are, say, a Sierra or a Vauxhall Cavalier. You're significantly better off, in fact. No airbags, of course, at this point in time, but you do have a very strong structure indeed. In fact, one of the things that differentiates the 99 from the 900 is the fact that it's got a longer nose. Partly it's to make room for more equipment up front because we've got power steering, air conditioning as an option, but also crumple zones and safety factors that make the car so much safer to be in. So if an accident happens over there, and don't forget it's got those huge safety bumpers as well, you might not even notice it's happened up here. But then we get to the engine. Up front, it's a standard, fairly normal, inline 4-cylinder, 2-litre, 1994cc petrol. What's to get excited about that? It's initially the old Saab B engine, which started life in 1972. It's an 8-valve 4-cylinder, as I say, and it was available with single Zenith carburetor, twin Zenith carburetor, fuel injection from Bosch, or the ultimate, which is what this baby is, turbo with fuel injection. However, in 1984, I believe it was, that got updated to the H engine, which is a development of the B engine, and that got 16 valves and a whole bunch of other developments. This is also the same engine that was developed into the Triumph slant as well. So, as if it wasn't as exotic and curious enough, already to have a turbo in the early 1980s, or indeed the late 70s, they made this thing front-wheel drive, for one thing, which could be regarded as a safety thing because it means that you're which could be regarded as a safety thing because it means that you're pulling the car rather than pushing the car. But that's the normal part. What is weird is that the drive from the crank of that engine doesn't come off the back of the engine, it comes off the front. And it's a front-wheel drive with a longitudinally mounted engine, which is very unusual indeed. And the gearbox, like on a Mini, is mounted beneath the engine. So effectively, it takes the place of the oil pan, not the sump. Unlike the Mini, it uses its own oil, so there is a separation, but it's sitting directly beneath. There's a chain drive to the drive gears, which then drive to the wheels. It's a very unusual setup. Only Saab. Literally only Saab. If there's a way of taking a simple solution and ridiculously over-engineering it, for whatever reason they want, Saab will take it. That's just Saab all over. So driving the thing is actually very nice. It's a heavy thing to drive. You can feel the weight and the heft of the vehicle, as you often could in 1980s cars. But like in, well, a big old Volvo 240, for example, you can feel it's a heavy, solid car. We've got power steering, so that makes life easier. And we've got power brakes, of course, so we can stop on a dime, as they say. And the visibility out of here is just second to none. Because as I say, we've got the narrow A-posts and we've got the big wraparound windscreen. Gear shift is a little bit notchy, but then often it is on front-wheel drive cars from 40 plus years ago. And the pedals, they're quite heavy as well, but what is a little unusual and surprising is how far offset to the right the accelerator is. When I first climbed into the car and went to go and rev it without looking at my feet, I was pushing the brake pedal. The brake pedal is directly in front of you, the accelerator is off to your right. One thing you do have to be aware of is that the turbo does kick in every now and then, and you've got to be thinking about that as you go around a corner. You don't want to be giving a blip of the throttle as you go halfway around a hairpin bend and suddenly it just kicks in with a bunch more torque, because that would be a little unfortunate. The suspension is a development of, well, what happened in the 99, and they've been fine-tuning it, honing it for years, getting it exactly right. And so the car does ride really nicely. A little bit of bounce to it, but it's a nice, soft, flowing ride. The aero suspension is a lowering kit with stiffer springs and shocks, but even that is still pretty comfortable by today's standards. It uses double wishbones at the front and a beam axle at the rear with panhard rods, but they're unusual in that normally the panhard rod kind of setup would have all the linkages from the front of the axle. This has got one to the front and one to the back, so effectively it becomes a Watts linkage rather than a panhard rod, but it is technically a panhard rod. Turbo kicking in. Now this particular car has got a fascinating backstory. As I say, it really is an incredible story. It's one family owned from brand new. That heater is incredible. And it started life not in Sweden, not in Europe, in Oman, in the Middle East. The current owner's family were living out there back in the 1980s. And her dad wanted to treat himself to, well, something a bit special. And at that time, Oman was an emerging power, and so there weren't a huge number of luxury brands out there. It was basically Saab or Mercedes. And he decided he wanted to get himself a Saab Turbo because that was the pinnacle of the cool and interesting, unusual cars. So anyway, he went to go to look in the showroom, and this was there. Now this had been specifically ordered by a Sheik. Now, because the car was going to live in the desert, they made a number of changes to the spec. They wanted the absolute top spec possible, as good as it gets. However, in the desert, you want to make sure you've got a couple of things. First of all, air conditioning is an absolute must. Secondly, you don't want a sunroof. You've got enough of that all the time. That's not a luxury over there. That's something you don't want. Didn't want heated seats because, well, why would you in a desert? And also didn't want leather. If you were a kid in the 70s and you sat on vinyl seats, you know why. So this car was specifically ordered in this, I think it's unique, sandy beige colour. And the stripes down the side, you may have noticed, they are also factory installed. They are as picked at the dealer, which is quite unique as well. But then in order to get a top spec car body shell without a sunroof, they had to pull a low spec car off the production line. And so a low spec car, which we think was a blue shell, was pulled off the production line and then repurposed to being a top spec car. These seats, which are the high spec leather sports seats, were reupholstered in velour, and the thing was built, obviously, as you can see, with all the luxury items it could possibly have. We've got the upgraded sound system, we've got the APC, and that stands for Automatic Performance Control, which is basically a boost controller, so it can run on different grades of fuel anywhere you want to take it to. It's basically loaded with everything, apart from the things that were specifically chosen not to have. Now, although this is a 1980s car in particular, it came out in 1978, so it is a child of the 70s, and you really can see that. But not just a child of the 70s, it is specifically, and can only be, from Sweden, and specifically more, Saab. The design was by a guy called Bjorn Envall, who'd been with Saab since the 1960s and stayed there until 1992. He was on the design team and involved in a lot of big projects, including the 9000, which of course is based on the Fiat and Lancia and Alfa project, and it was very different indeed from the other three. But most notably, he was the designer responsible for the 99 Combi, because this is based essentially on the chassis of the 99, but with a far lengthened nose. But the rear of the car is very much a Combi Coupe, which he also designed. Now, it was available in several different body styles. You could have a 2-door or a 4-door saloon like this. Wanted to get more practical, you could have a 3 or a 5-door hatchback, and later in 1986, you could get a convertible as well. Right, let's take a quick look around the cabin, because this too is a wee bit Saaby. First of all, the doors. They're not normal doors. They don't close into a door frame, they wrap around underneath the car. And the idea is this is twofold. First of all, this big rubber strip and everything like that protects the sills from all the grime and dirt that would normally sit against the side of the car, stops it rotting. Secondly, you've got less of a step to climb over when you get in and out. So if it's a wet, mushy, snowy Arctic winter, you're not going to get dirty snow up your trousers. So you keep your clothes clean. They're always thinking, a diamond bullet. So looking around the rest of the cabin, first of all, the doors, they're almost like big SUV or van doors because of that extra depth. They're very tall indeed. At the top, we've got little vinyl elephant hide, we've got velour, we've got nice armrests, and we've got a decent sized map pocket. Maps, not cup holders because of the 1980s. Stepping inside, I will first of all draw your attention to these fabulous seats. Now, these are the standard Saab Aero Sports Design seats. However, you'll notice they are velour. This is a one-off option. These had to be taken off the line, heated seat elements removed, and reupholstered in the lower spec velour, ideal for the desert. Apparently, they are so warm in the wintertime you don't need them to be heated, which is fantastic. Let us climb in. Shut this door. That is a heavy door. There is some serious heft to that. Check out this lovely little door handle. Volvo took the approach of hiding the door handle horizontally in the armrest, but Saab have just tucked it way up over here. It does feel a little bit narrow in here. Now, first of all, I will show you the most important thing of all, the T-shelf. We have a large T-shelf up here with even a recessed area for putting pickled herring and lingonberries. They won't roll out of your lingonberry slot. Now, being Swedish, we do have air vents all around this big windscreen, which does wrap completely around you, like in a fighter plane, of course, giving you incredible vision and very, very narrow A-posts. And mirrored on either side with this panel with blowers going up to the glass and what appears to be loudspeakers, because if you had the Aero option, you got better upgraded stereo in the car. I am wearing fingerless mittens because it's 2 degrees outside and I'm feeling both of those degrees. Now, let's look at the dashboard itself. As we keep on harping on about, it is fighter plane inspired. So, all the main dials are in front of you and the dashboard wraps around you. On the corners, we've got air vents which are directed permanently at the window, so you've always got demisting action going on. And you've got a mobile one, so you can choose to have it by the window or to yourself or whatever else you need. Our headlight switch is up here, easy to turn on and off. Our fog light switch for the rears is a huge button easily found directly beneath it. And a little curiosity, your mirror switch is a joystick on the left for your left-hand mirror, joystick on the right for the right-hand mirror. In the centre console, we've got the most simple, classic 3-dial design for the fans, temperature and direction of air travel, and big chunky buttons for your main controls, because if you're wearing gloves like you might be in the wintertime in Sweden, you can hit them easily, no problem. None of your touchscreen nonsense which everyone hates. The radio is right up top, and so you don't have to take it on. It's far off the road in order to use it. It's been updated with a Blaupunkt Bremen, which is a fantastic radio. I say it every time I see one, I want one. And over to the right, gently facing away from the driver now, we've got a nice glove box with a padded lid, and beneath that we've got a big ashtray. We've got a small cubby, which is the same size as the regular radio, and in the 1983, this is where most car companies put the radio, so you have to delve for it and hunt around your knees to change the radio station. Not Saab, up here at the top. And beneath that, a huge one, big enough for a big pair of gloves, ready to go out into the Arctic. Now, stepping back a little further, we have got a real oddity of the Saab brand from back in the day. The ignition key is down here, on the floor between the seats, underneath the handbrake. But if you want to take that key out of the lock, you have to put the car into reverse, which is kind of an anti-theft thing, because when you take the key out, the car is locked in reverse. So if a thief hotwires it, they can only drive it backwards unless they drill out that lock, making the car very hard to steal indeed. Now also we've got controls for our air conditioning up here, and we have a blank down here where I imagine our sunroof control would be, but this one, special order, no sunroof. And we have got headrests, because Saab are so safety conscious, like Volvo, they really do care about people not getting hurt in their cars, or they used to anyway because they don't exist anymore. Headrests, standard in the early 80s and the late 70s, very, very innovative and clever, and these seats are very, I'd say, buckety, they're supportive, they're sports seats. And finally up front, we've got 4 electric window controls. Bear in mind, 1983. This is not a Rolls-Royce, not a Cadillac. This is a Saab. Saab were a very, very well-regarded high-spec brand. Now I just want to quickly show you the rear seat area. Now doors, same as the front doors, velour, elephant hide, vinyl, and electric window switches in the door this time, not in the centre console. Climb aboard, we have got a reasonable amount of legroom. We've also got a central ashtray, seatbelt warning sign to make sure you don't forget to buckle up. We've got an armrest, because luxury and comfort. But here we've got some couple of interesting things. We've got the history file that comes with this car, and this is absolutely incredible. The owner's dad, he recorded every little thing that happened to the car and filed it away. So we've got 41 years of receipts just here. And in addition to that, we've got more of the car's history, because this car originally started life, as I say, in Oman. This is the Oman export plate that came off the car in 1988, which is an incredible thing in itself. I mean, my wall of number plates, that would be pride of place in that, something like that. That's a real rarity. And then they lived in France for a while, so it got registered in France, because obviously it is left-hand drive, perfect for living in France. Or wherever La Salette is, I don't know. Limousin? Notably, this is not a hatchback, this is a 4-door saloon. So we've got a fixed parcel shelf, we've got a pair of speakers here in the back, and we've got, well, a heated rear window. Now, obviously, being a saloon, not a hatchback, it's not quite as practical as the hatch, the 5-door. However, the owner is a wheelchair user, and you can fit an entire wheelchair in the back of this car. So it's not exactly impractical, it's just a little more elegant. Now this particular car was built in Trollhättan, which is Saab's main factory, but they also built them in Malmo, which is the Arlov factory, which I think is no longer there, and the base models were actually manufactured in Finland by Valmet, and I think they built something like 238,000 base model cars in Finland. The dashboard is absolutely fascinating. First of all, it's in kph with no mph adjustment, so you've got a little warning tag down here just to let you know what kph to mph calculations would be. Top speed on this car is about 126 miles an hour, so you need to be aware of that right the way up there. Now, we've got two very interesting gauges on here. We've got the fuel and temperature, of course, we've got the speedometer, then we've got the clock down here, which is ordinary, but then we've got the eco gauge, like in a BMW, which as I'm lifting off, it goes well into the green, and as I put my foot down, it dives up towards the red. But more excitingly, we've got the turbo gauge on the top right, which as we accelerate and things, it tells us how much whizziness the turbo is delivering. We want lots of whizziness, that's the given. And the golden rule here is the more whizziness, the better. Any car with a turbo gauge is a winner in my book, I have to say. And also, this is quite interesting, these vents in the centre, like on a Rover up until the 1990s, these are cold-only vents. They give fresh air to the passengers, so even if you've got the temperature cranked really, really hot because it's minus 37 outside, so you don't get drowsy in the heat because it's a really good heater, you have cold air to blow on your face, like on a Rover, like an R8 or a P6. It's a really good little feature. I absolutely love the look of this car, the shape, the proportions, the insanity of the over-engineering. There's literally nothing not to adore about this car. I love the weirdness and the quirkiness of having the ignition key on the floor and a reverse gear lockout so no one can steal your car. Brilliant. I love the turbo gauge and the huge chunky bumpers, very much like on my Volvo 740 in fact. And I just love the general Saab over-engineering ethos. This is why they were the luxury car for the thinking man. You'll notice I've worn a roll neck jumper for today because I'm pretending to be an architect. Architects bought these things, you know. It really is a fantastically fun thing to do. Oh my word, that turbo, that just kicks in, it spins the wheel, you don't go any faster, but it feels amazing. This and the 911 Turbo were the two most exciting cars of the early 80s because, well, they were turbos. Nothing was a turbo back then. It's so comfortable. These velour sports seats, you just sink into them. They're really supportive, but at the same time, they're really comfortable as well. Oh, nice fan. I didn't do a horn test, but the horn is ridiculously easy to brush against, so here goes. Yep, that is a part that does not want to collide with an elk. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this ride out in this fabulous, unique left-hand drive one-off custom built by the factory Saab. If you have, please, as always, like and subscribe, and join us again next time driving something completely different.